What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Star Wars custom video. Today we're going to be taking a look at making a Phase 1 Commander Cody and a Phase 2 Captain Vaughn and Captain Rex. I've been building up a few clones here lately. When these Commander Codys dropped, I bought like all of the ones my Walmart had. And so I've decided to kind of hit all of these all in one video and show you all the customs I made out of these Commander Cody bodies. So the first one I'm going to be working on here is just making a Phase 1 Cody. I'm thinking I can switch all the parts from the Phase 2 helmet over onto the Phase 1 helmet and just hopefully keep that all stock so I don't have to do repainting. This one is Apo from the Kenobi wave, and I just never really liked this blue. It was always too light for me and didn't really fit the other ones, so I decided I'm going to try to turn this guy into a Captain Vaughn. Now, one quick jump in. For Vaughn and for my Cody that's going on the shelf, I 3D printed this ball peg to put on the old Cody heads. I like the look of the old Cody heads still, and so I really just wanted to switch the old ones onto the new body. So if you want this ball joint adapter I made, it's free on my Colts 3D page, so go check that out. Also, a few people commented they didn't realize that the hole in his belt was for Obi-Wan's lightsaber. So if you didn't know that, there you go. Well, I guess we're kind of starting off with both here, the Phase 1 Cody and the Vaughn. So the Vaughn I messed with quite a bit, but the Phase 1 Cody was simple enough. I just swapped over the shoulder pads, the elbow pads, the hands, and the knees from the new Cody onto just a regular Black Series Clone Trooper body. This is the chest piece I pulled off of him. I'll end up using this for Vaughn later, but I was still trying to use this Apo chest piece at this point. But you can see how different the whites are between the Commander Cody and the base body, and so that's why I decided just to swap these parts over to the base body versus trying to, instead of just trying to use Cody. You can see here there's a little bit of differences to the armor. That gray part's gone, the belt is going to be different, and then his bicep strap thing is gone. So everything else is pretty much the same. So the knee pads, the hands, the elbows, and the shoulders all swap over fine, and they look pretty accurate to what is on the show. So I end up putting this helmet in some boiling water and popping off all of the loose bits. So this visor and the little flashlight thing and his antennas. But the visor, I did have to do a little bit of dremeling to clean up a little bit. And on the Phase 2 helmet, the visor kind of connects to the chin there. And on the Phase 1, it doesn't quite reach all the way down, so I just snipped the end there, that little peg that pegged it to the chin on the Phase 2, so that it would look more accurate to the Phase 1. Also, to get the visor on, I had to take an X-Acto knife and just cut off the tip of his ear to get the visor to fit on perfectly straight. It didn't really want to go on there beside that. Like, it looked kind of clunky if I tried to just squeeze it on there. So I decided just to remove a little bit of material on either side just so it would pop on straight. But here's how it looks once I try to squeeze it on there. It's still not perfect, but this saves me from having to repaint the whole figure, and also I didn't really want to have to buy a 3D printed helmet. So here's the helmet with all the greebles glued on. Well, the visor is glued on. This flashlight I haven't glued on yet, and the antenna yet. But the visor, you can see it doesn't come all the way down like it does on the Phase 2. I don't know if that's accurate or not for the Phase 1, but lined it up with that with the black band going around this helmet, and it's pretty straight and it looks pretty stock. I was pretty happy with how it turned out. This is a 3D printed one I have. This one was busted though, so that's why I didn't use this one, but they look pretty much the same, and the 3D printed one, it doesn't go to the chin either, so maybe I was just stressing about nothing. The helmet probably still looks a little wide still, maybe. It looks more animated. I guess that's a positive. So this flashlight piece, luckily I got it off the other helmet pretty easily, and you can see it has a tiny little peg hole in it. And so what I just did was use the tip of my X-Acto knife to kind of drill a hole into his head and pop it in. And this antenna, I also used my X-Acto knife to cut a little rectangle until I could get this peg squeezed in. And I'm just going to glue those in a little bit. I just wanted to show off before I glued them on. Alright, so the rest of Phase 1 Cody is just paint work. I think the hardest part about this was trying to match the orange, but everything else is pretty simple. I painted the visor, just the very tip of it, and then I tried to hand paint the star on here, or whatever this is, like a burst on his chin. and I think it turned out fine. It was really small, so it was difficult to try to get it to look kind of clean, but I think it turned out okay. I painted his fin orange as well, and then I just added a little dot to the front of his flashlight piece to give it a little bit more detail. But the legs, I just kind of masked off where I wanted these stripes to go, and then painted them in. It's like I said, this is, guys, just after you get the helmet done and the parts swapped over, it's just mostly painting these orange pieces. And so you can see I used the Cricut to kind of cut out little stencils for his 3 stripes on his upper part. And I forgot about his kind of, I guess, diaper stripe or whatever. But I took measurements of the one that are on the Black Series Cody and just made that design in the Cricut, cut it out, and then just put them on, and then came back and masked off around them. It's kind of hard to get these perfectly straight though, because all of the Black Series clone troopers, the torsos are warped. The overlay, every single one is warped. Like this one's fresh out of the box and he's warped as well. So if you didn't notice that before, I'm sorry for pointing it out, but every single one of them is kind of skewed to the his right, so that's very annoying to work with when you're trying to get a straight line on the chest. So for the orange, this is kind of what I came up with here. I went and bought all these at my local hobby store, just trying to find the perfect orange out of the bottle, and I didn't have any luck there. But mixing these two, I think it was 50-50 probably for these two, was pretty close. So if you really wanted to repaint the orange, you could probably just do that, but I really wanted to match the orange that was already on him, so I just added a little bit of yellow to lighten it up, and then I would go back, and it was coming out of the bottle pretty reddish, or that was pretty reddish, so I added just a tiny bit of green to it. Green will offset the red, so help it look a little bit more yellowish versus reddish, if that makes any sense. Green kind of offsets the red, so I just added a very little amount of that to my mixture, and then so these 4 colors were pretty close to the match. Like you can see, the belt and the thighs I've already painted. You can't really tell that much of a difference versus the hand or the shoulders. But if you wanted just to buy one paint to do this, I think this one would probably be your best bet. It was pretty close, just straight out of the bottle. But like adding a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green to that also helped it. But this one just straight out of the bottle is probably your best bet. So you can see here I masked around where I had this tape laid out at, and then I could come back and just do a few thin coats of this orange. It's easier to paint than yellow, but it's still not the most accepting to go on, I guess. It's still not the easiest to go on, so just take your time, do thin coats, and make sure you don't get anything like caked up, because that's annoying to try to have to come back and sand and redo. Okay, so for Vaughn, since I was pretty much using the Cody body, the whites were off, they were too orange, it was throwing me off, so I ended up repainting him with that white scar. So I did have to skip over quite a bit of footage here, because this guy I redid like 3 times. Honestly, this one took the longest, and it wasn't even that difficult of a paint job. The helmet was, but the body wasn't. So I based everything in white scar. I did really light coats of white scar, just try to even everything out. And also, if I do light coats, I can still see the blue markings underneath, so that can help me out later with masking. This is the chest from Cody as well, and his shoulder pads, and then the rest of it's just Apo. But this is the blue I'm using, both these dark blues, like a 50-50, maybe a little bit more of the lighter one. You just kind of do coats and just add and remix whenever you need to. So these are the tapes I use. I got them on Amazon. They're like Warhammer tapes. They're kind of trash. If anybody has any recommendations for better ones, let me know. Luckily, I could just scrape this away where it got underneath the tape, but I know I could probably do thinner coats and the tape would work better. It just doesn't stick very well, and anytime there's like a sharp corner or something, it just peels off immediately, and so I end up having to do a lot of touch-ups. So if you have any tape that works really well with action figures, just really thin like masking tape, let me know down in the comments, please, because I'm tired of this stuff, and I've had it forever because I won't go through it because I hate using it. But I said all that, and now you can see how bad my layers are here, because I just kind of slapped it on. But I know it's not going to work very well, so that leads me not to really care about doing light coats. Just an internal struggle here. Try to trust the tape and do thin coats, or just do heavy coats and then clean up with an X-Acto knife. Also, I copied the logo from this 332nd Trooper I have. His helmet's so red too. I didn't notice that until I pulled him down, but I just tried to copy his logo with masking tape and then do the blue and then do touch-ups where needed. So the helmet's the biggie here. I think everything else is pretty simple, but this, like I said before, this is the old like archive Cody, and so I just base coated it with white scar as well. And then I went through and painted all the details with kind of varying shades of gray, just mixing black and white together and doing the band part a darker gray, the top part a lighter gray. And then I hit the kind of antennas with some metallics. But then I painted the teeth black, the eyes black, and the little parts on the front of his helmet black. But the orange, I think, is the most important part. Everything else, it's kind of tedious, but it's not hard. But the orange here, I did the half circle on the head, and then just followed the sculpt line for the cheeks, and then just had those come across to the chin. You can see the outline here. It was turning out pretty good. The orange I used for this, I kind of hate. So I was using this mythical orange. I bought this a long time ago, and it's pretty bad. It doesn't ever go on very well. It always kind of seems oily almost, like it doesn't want to stick very well at all. So I was trying to mix that with a little bit of yellow to try to make it a little bit lighter and also maybe go on a little bit better. And it did go on better, but it still took like obscene amount of coats, like 6 or 7 coats to get a nice clean coat. But after I got that pretty well, I could come back with this dark red. I missed a few spots on this initial paint. No, actually, no, this one's good. I did miss a few spots on my initial run of this. I'm using this chaotic red from War Paints as well. But I did miss a few spots because I was using the screenshots from Hot Toys as reference. And I didn't realize that they had to do corrections on their release. So I had to come back and paint some spots. But you can see here the red for the visor. And then I did the red underneath the eyes. That's the part I was missing, is the red underneath the eyes. I never realized he had that until I actually looked at reviews from the Hot Toys one. And then under his visor is white too. I painted that red. I had to come back and repaint that white. But then he just has the stripe. After I got a good coat of that and let it dry for a while, I did a little bit of dry brushing with white. That's where you see all that chipping that. I just want to add the weathering while I'm painting. It helps me not stress out as bad whenever I'm not doing a great job with my line work. I can add a little bit of weathering and see that, like, oh, okay, it's gonna be fine. But now I'm going in and using the Hot Toys as reference, trying to punch in these details with the white. I don't like some people use like a pencil or something to kind of sketch out what they're gonna do here. But whenever I'm painting anything white, like details like this, I know it's gonna take like 5 or 6 coats. And so I like to just use really thin down white paint to kind of sketch out what I'm gonna do. And then especially with this dark red, it's easy to come back and do touch-ups later. So I'm just doing a lot of thin coats of white to kind of try to get that design on there. And then if I mess up anywhere, I can come back with the red and touch it up. Or you can clear coat before you do the white and just scratch it away with an X-Acto knife. But here's what we're looking at, like at the end. I got those white details punched in and I got them on the head. The only part I'm not really happy about is the diamonds on the head. I feel like the one on the left side of his helmet is a little bit too far over. But I redid those like 4 or 5 times trying to get the perfect size. And so at this point I was pretty much done with painting this helmet. And so that one's gonna stay like that. Now I'm just gonna go through and do my final kind of run of weathering. I use this kind of older brush, like a cheap flat brush. Wipe away most of the paint and then just go through and kind of brush that on to add some weathering on the edges of his helmet, and I'll try to bring out all the details. This helmet being like the 2013 I think version or something like that, this helmet's pretty old and so the details are a little bit muddy, and so I tried to do a lot of dry brushing here just to try to bring out what details I can, because like I said, I think this helmet looks really good. It's just the sculpt is a little bit muddy, I think. I end up going with like a lot smaller brush though to get a little bit more control over these edges, because I wanted to really shoot for the corners and stuff like that. Areas where it would naturally chip away a lot more. Just try to use very little paint And if you do put too much paint on there, you can come back with your finger and kind of wipe it away while it's still kind of wet, and that won't mess anything up. So I just try to really take my time here, use very little paint, and make sure to clear coat before you do this, so that way if you do mess up, you can just use a wet Q-tip or something and wipe it away. But here's what we're looking like after all that. And then I decided that he really needed his blue vents. Are they vents? I don't know what these are supposed to be. I think vents. But I bought these water slides a while back. I can't remember who I bought them from, but they don't work great. It probably could just be me. Honestly, it probably is me. I've had water slides in the past though that go on perfectly, like no issues. And then I have some that I cannot get on for the life of me. But luckily I have like 100 of these. So I was using the Mark Fit, just a coat of Mark Fit. I dipped the water slide in water for like 30 seconds and then slide it on and then let that dry for a little bit and hit it with the Mark Fit again. I'll show more in a little bit because I'm gonna do Rex as well, and I used some water slides there, but they turned out fine. I did end up going through like 6 or 7 sets of these to get these on this well, but they turned out pretty good. And this is what the final helmet looks like. This was definitely the hardest part, and also probably my favorite part of this custom. Okay, next we're gonna work on doing a phase 2 Rex. While I was working on those other 2, Rex dropped, and so I went to Walmart and found 2 of them. And so I decided that one would stay a phase 1 on the shelf, and one I would use to update this old, this is the original release Rex. Honestly, I think this Rex, this phase 2 Rex, was one of my first Black Series figures. I think he was like $60 or $70 at the time. And some lady on Facebook Marketplace was selling him for like 20, and so I jumped on that, and it ended up getting delivered to my neighbor's house, and so I had to go meet my neighbors that day to get him. But fun memories there, so I'm gonna try to reuse him so I don't have to lose him. But these are the water slides I got. I'll have them linked down below, and I'm gonna try to swap over the helmet and the pauldron. A bunch of people are kind of trashing on these holsters and the plastic comma or the rubber comma. I definitely like the rubber commas. I do think these holsters are too big, but the rubber commas I'm all for, so I'm gonna try to reuse that and not the old ones. But here's the pauldron on him. I did have to do a little bit of dremeling because there's pegs that peg into the body, and so I had to get rid of those. And then I got the helmet off. This rangefinder for the new one looks a little bit better than the old one, so I'm gonna go through the extra effort to try to swap this over as well. But you can see the peg's a lot smaller now, so it doesn't really hold in very well. So I'll have to use some heat shrink tube or something to try to get that to fit in perfectly. So the big part for phase 1 Rex are these weld marks on his torso. It's really the only major change you have to do between the phase 1 and phase 2 besides the helmet and the pauldron. And so I wanted to get these as well as possible, so I decided to sculpt them on rather than just painting them on. I used some epoxy sculpt, and I just got a little bit and then tried to roll it out into like a snake type form, just really thin as I could get it, honestly. And this one's dried out, so it's kind of hard to show what I did exactly. But while it was still fresh, I stuck it on there and just used my X-Acto knife to kind of squish it down on there. And then I let that dry overnight. If I was gonna do this again though, I'd use green stuff. Epoxy sculpt, I like it better, but it's not flexible at all. Green stuff has a little bit of flexibility, and the epoxy sculpt did end up trying to peel away after I messed around with the torso a little bit more. And so I ended up just coming back with a little bit of super glue and rubbing that on the top to keep it all held together. But my plan for the weld marks is to do that silver paint and then come through with a thin coat of this fresh rust effect paint and just try to paint the edges to match what's going on with the helmet. Because I really didn't want to repaint this helmet, and so I'm going to try to match this technique as best as possible on the chest. This is how it turned out. I did this side just so I can make sure it all worked pretty well, and I do like it. I wish it was a little bit thicker, but I do like how it turned out. It's pretty subtle. But whenever you're using silvers or any kind of metallic paints, I like to do a base coat of black first. So I tried to paint everything with the black and then paint the silver just barely on the top. You can see here I was trying to just be really careful not to get on the torso. It would still be pretty easy to clean up at this time. I can just use the X-Acto knife to scrape off the extra paint. but I wanted to get this as clean as possible so I wouldn't have to do too much touch-ups on it. So here's what it looks like. Here's the side that's finished. Here's what it looks like with just the silver. So if you wanted just the silver, I think it looks really good, but I wanted to match the helmet like I said, so I came back with this fresh rust. And this honestly is just kind of like a light brown, reddish brown, but I think it does match the helmet pretty well, so I was pretty happy with it. But like I said, I just used a thin coat. I tried to follow the, try to paint just the sides of the sculpt here. I did kind of go over a little bit. I think trying to film while painting, I didn't get as clean of a job, but I just cleaned it up later with the X-Acto knife. But after that dried, after that rust paint dried, I came back with the silver and just barely painted the tips of it once again to just bring out that silver, because that rust did kind of cover a little bit of my paint job up. So I just painted the tip of the sculpt with that silver again, and then came back with my X-Acto knife and did a little bit of cleanup work. And here's what it looks like at the end. I think the one I did off camera definitely looks better, but they did turn out really good, and I am really happy with how well they matched the actual helmet. So next up, we're gonna try to tackle some weathering. I just wanted to try to get a little bit of this weathering done before I started actually doing any paint work. I wanted to see how easily this blue paint scrapes off. And with these sanding twigs, pretty much, I think I'm using like the roughest coarse grit out of the pack, and I just lightly kind of scuff up the top and the edges of these blue stripes and stuff on his body. It worked through pretty good, and then especially if you do a wash or something, these kind of scratch marks you're making are going to pick that up really well. So I think it does add a little bit of like a natural kind of weathering effect. I'm trying out something new with my weathering here. I bought this Tamiya Weathermaster kit like years ago, and I just never had any good luck with it. And so I decided to try to give it another shot on some of these customs I've been working on here lately. And so it just kind of, this one comes in 3 colors. They have I think it's a rust brown. I can't remember. It's like a brownish, a white, and a black. I'm mainly just focused on the black and the brown. But it comes with this little like applicator here, and that thing is garbage. So I usually just use a regular paintbrush to put it on there. But I just use a toothpick to kind of scrape up some of it, and then get a lot on this paintbrush, and then come through and just dust him all over with it. Not really being careful at all at this point, just kind of getting it in all of the cracks and all of the nooks and crannies. Just everywhere. Just a really good powdering over all of the armor pieces. Just pretty much trying to get it everywhere. I do kind of mix in a little bit of brown every once in a while, just to add some extra depth, or I guess extra types of weathering. But this initial coat, I'm just shooting for coverage, not necessarily trying to hit anything specific. But after I got finished with that, I cleaned up my desk a little bit, because that stuff does get everywhere. So make sure you lay down like a piece of paper or something so it doesn't get all over your desk. But I can take some fresh Q-tips and dip them in water, and then just wipe away most of it. I'm just trying to, it's almost like I'm trying to clean up a mistake I made at this point. So I'm just trying to clean up as much as possible. I do try to go a little bit lighter on the cleanup in like the ridges and stuff where dirt would naturally build up. But mostly I'm just trying to wipe it all away, because there's not really a good way to get all of this off. So doing this is gonna leave enough behind that it still looks pretty well weathered. But you could always come back and add a little bit more after this dries later if you want to. But if you do a really strong initial coat of this, this effect will work out pretty well. I've done it a few times now, and I'm pretty happy with it, and it looks really natural. Because usually when I do dry brushing and stuff, it never looks completely natural. It looks like I applied the dry brushing, you know? So this actually looks like dust and dirt have built up in his armor. Now we're gonna do these water slides again. So I had some for the full kit, but since I'm not doing a full repaint, I decided just to use his like tick marks on his legs and his arms, since those are the only parts that would really be difficult to paint. So I started with that mark fit. I did a nice coat of the mark fit where I'm gonna apply the water slide. Then I'll let the water slide set in some clean water for about 30 seconds. And then I drop it on there, and then try to use either tweezers, but I feel like a nice thin pointy paintbrush works a little bit better. So I just dip it in water and then use the tip of that to try to slide the water slide off of the backing onto the actual where I want it. These were definitely worth like $5 I paid. I think they were on sale, but still, these helped out a lot on these details that I really didn't trust myself to paint that well. But after I get that put on, I can use a Q-tip to just kind of lightly try to pull all that water out from behind the water slide. So I just roll the Q-tip along the surface very lightly and then try to just clean up as much water as I can. Then once I got all the water out from behind it, I can come back with this mark fit and just do another light coat. So for the tick marks on the hands and the arms, I'm just putting very little paint on my smallest paintbrush and just lightly doing a few coats on each to try to get it looking like he scratched it in. So we're just doing light coats and build up my tick marks there. I want this to look natural, so I initially tried to just scrape the paint off with an X-Acto knife, and it was working, but it didn't look very good, and it was taking a long time to actually get through the paint. And so I think this is a lot easier, even though I don't think it looks as clean. But I don't think anybody's gonna be staring at his arms and hands that hard, so it looks good from a couple feet away. So I got him all put back together here. I did a little bit of black dry brushing, and then once I started getting him back together, the blue from the pauldron was definitely standing out versus the blue from the stripes. So I came back with the same mixture I did for Vaughn and just did a few coats on the pauldron. The pauldron did not want to take the blue very well, so that was like five coats to get a nice even coat, and I still think that it's too light. So maybe I should have made it a little bit darker, but I got it pretty close, and then so I was pretty happy with it. But you can see how different those blues actually are from the original Phase 2 versus the new Phase 1 Rex. And I'm just doing the same thing with the helmet. You can see his little ear details, or those little details on the forehead are a lot lighter than the rest of it, because I've already hit the rest of it with a couple of coats of that blue. And so I also came through and hit some of the details with some extra color to kind of bring out the details in this helmet. This is another helmet that's really good, like an older Black Series helmet. I think they were doing really good with the Clone Troopers back then. They're getting better now, but they kind of stumbled backwards and they're trying to work their way back to being as good as they used to be, you know? So I'm just doing the same kind of weathering on the helmet. I did go maybe a little bit too dark here because I did have to do a lot of cleaning up with the Q-tips and the water to get this guy not looking too dirty. And this powder made the blue even darker than it was before. And before it was a little bit too dark of a blue. And so I had to come back and repaint the blue after I got all of this done. But same thing here, I'm just trying to get even coverage with all this powder. I actually put a paper towel down this time, so hopefully that'll save a little bit of this. But this is what he looked like after I got it all done. As you can see, I did some heavy coats of that here, and so it took a while to get it all cleaned up. But this is what he looked like after I got him all cleaned up. It's crazy how much it made this helmet, like all of the details are so much sharper now. I really try to leave it into those deep recesses and stuff just to keep that detail there. And so it is crazy how much this helmet gets brought out with just a simple kind of brushing of that powder. They should go back to the, well, this was a removable helmet. I don't even know what happened here, how they kind of got this one as good as they did, but this one's great. So like I said, I did repaint the blue again. I made it a little bit lighter. And now I'm just going to go back with this white scar and try to do a little bit of chipping on that blue. So I'm just doing really just kind of dabbing on just very little onto the helmet where it would naturally kind of chip off around the edges and around where the visor connects to the actual helmet. Just adding, I didn't really want to dry brush this because the whites are different, so I didn't want that to stand out. And also I didn't want to have to really repaint anything else on this helmet. Everything else looked pretty good, so I just tried to go out of my way to do as quick of a detail work as I could. So here's the rangefinder. As you can see, I cut off a little piece of this heat shrink tube, just about the exact same length as that peg, and slipped that over the actual peg. And this was like a perfect fix for this. It made it like a perfect size for that peg hole. So With the heat shrink tube, you just want to hit it with the lighter just real quick. You don't want to melt in these plastics, so it's just kind of like quickly hitting it on the flame and then letting it cool for a little bit. But once I got that on there, you can see it just plugged in perfectly. I was really happy with how this turned out. I really didn't expect this to work out as well as it did, and it still articulates fine and everything, so I'm really happy with that. But for my last step here, I'm going to use some UV clear resin and put it on the visors of Rex and Vaughn. Initially, I tried to just use a gloss coat on Vaughn's visor, and it just looked kind of streaky. It wasn't turning out great. I don't really like to use this UV resin because it's kind of hard to apply, and if you accidentally put it in the wrong spot or you accidentally go over anywhere, once you cure that, you're not getting it off. Like, that part's going to be shiny forever, and there's no covering it up. So just be really careful here. I like to use the tip of a tip to apply this. I just do a little blob somewhere and then just try to push it around where I want it. Sometimes it's hard to try to gauge how much you actually need, so I do like to do just little sections at a time, just putting very little on and just pushing it across the visor until I get one pretty even coat throughout the entire visor. I'll have to use my resin curing station, but you can buy a UV light on Amazon for like $5 and just use that. I think these three are pretty much done. I was really happy with how these turned out. I kind of maybe bought too many Codys. I don't know if that's possible, but I think I definitely bought one too many extra at least. I don't do a ton of clone trooper work just because I feel like there's artists out there that do really amazing jobs. But I did have kind of like a clone craze over the last months, I guess since May the 4th. And so I do have some commandos in the work. I have all of Delta Squad going. So if you want to see that video, make sure you're subbed to me on here. I'm gonna try to do something special there. I've ordered some kind of lights to put in the helmets, so we're gonna see what we can do there. I'm almost done with them. I keep putting it off though because I'm really scared it's not gonna work, so I keep putting that off. But I'm also 3D printing a life-size R2. That's gonna be a video in the far future, but if that's something you're interested in seeing updates about, you can follow me on Instagram. I'll try to post some whenever I get some major pieces done. But once again, thanks for watching, guys. And make sure you're subscribed to me. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.